great friends of mine, of great friends of Freemind. So the headsets, the if you need one, you can go and get it with your ID number. If you don't know, do not want it, leave it here, okay? Well, first of all, our panel, the topic the topic is the power of the industry. It's a very hot and intense topic because we started thinking the power of pharmaceutical industry. We were going along these lines first, but it's not just pharmaceutical industry because there's the industry of that does good and the industry that does bad. We have to look at both sides. There's industry that helps and the ones that only looks at profit. Everything needs to be balanced. So we brought to this panel people that will discuss about this, starting with Ana Luisa Pereira Moreira Mori, a pharmacist, a biochemist, a master's with a PhD in toxicology by the University of São Paulo, and she works at the University of São Paulo in the pharmaceutical faculty. And she works with this for patients with chronic disease or with cancer and diabetes. She is a co-author of the chapters of the book Pharmacy Clinics and Pharmaceutical Care. Ana Luisa, please take the floor. Thank you so much. Sorry, please go on stage, and thank you so much for being here. We also have with us today my great friend. He's from the Freemind family. Dr. Paulo César Correia, Deputy Professor of Department of Pediatric Clinics, course of Medicine of the Federal University of Ouro Preto, expert in tobacco control, certified in excellence by OPAS, the World Health Organization, master in public health by the Federal University of Minas Gerais, coordinator of education against tobacco in Brazil, and coordinator of the Commission of Tobacco Use of the Brazilian Society of Pneumology and Zeology. And also with us, a dear friend who last year So some important things. First of all, Paulo is a character, right? And we participated in a public call notice at the Senate in Brasilia. I was as a moderator already. Dr. Frederico Duarte Garcia, welcome. Dr. Frederico is a deputy professor at the Federal University of Minas Gerais and coordinator of the Center of Reference on Drugs, where he's developing a therapeutic vaccine against addiction to cocaine and crack. And he has a scholarship from CNPq. He is a PhD in biology from the University of Rouen, has been awarded from the Federal World Organization of Biology Psychiatry, and he's also a member of the Brazilian Association of Psychiatry. A round of applause to Dr. Garcia. So last year, we were here, very anxious in having you here, Doctor, but we know and we trust that everything happens in the time that God wants it to happen. So now let's start with Ana Luisa. Ana Luisa, did you give them your pen drive? I'm the moderator, the animator. We'll do our best here. So I was playing with Paulo, and we had a public hearing at the Senate where intense discussion is happening regarding e-cigarette. So there's a bill that wants to lead this topic, which, cannot be trusted. We cannot be trusted. And another project that wants to prohibit, definitely. And they are so smart that they got this bill and they didn't take it to a health communication. You would take it to a health commission, right? If you take it to a health commission, you will have doctors. No, they will know that it's bad. I'm not taking it to a health commission. You see how politics work in Brazil. No, we're going to take it to the economic matters commission, because then we will bias this bill toward regularization. Will help save money in Brazil, because it will collect more taxes with official distribution, no more contraband. We won't have to spend money with police to arrest the bad guys. They're smart. But they did not know that Dr. Stallo would be there, and they presented this presentation at the public hearing, saying that Brazil would collect 12 billion, sorry, 7 billion on taxes with the regulation of e-cigarette. And then Paulo took a study there showing what was the value of the impacts on the health of public health that the government will have to spend by releasing e-cigarettes and its bad effects. 153 billion and a half. So they were saying, oh, we're going to collect 7 billion, and then we showed that we would save 153 billion. We're still fighting this bill, but we're winning several rounds. It's a box fight. It's a box round. Now we can begin, I believe. Ana Luisa, please, you may begin. The floor is yours. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ana Luisa. I'm a pharmaceutist of the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Science of the University of São Paulo, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank the Congress, Gisele, and also the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Sciences of the University of São Paulo, also Dr. Maria Aparecida Nicoletti, who's the person responsible for PharmUSP, and also to the intern and student of the faculty who collaborated to prepare these slides and really helped. So, we're going to talk about medicalization of life. We're going to give a critical perspective on this topic. We're going to talk about what is medicalization, why medicalization is a problem, examples of drugs used in medicalization, the population reached, factors that contribute to medicalization and consequences to the individual person and societies, the rational use of medications, and a bit about our work at PharmUSP. I would like to, first of all, before starting my presentation, ask you guys a question so that you can answer this question at the end of the presentation. And answer when you have an opportunity for yourselves, for each one of you. Are you medicalizing your life? Well, what is medicalization? We can define medicalization as treatment of situations of common ordinary situations in life that before were not considered a problem of medicine, a medical problem, were not considered a pathology, and then begin to be seen and considered medical problems and treated with medications. This can be and is one of the definitions of medicalization. This is a concept that is not a concept, a recent concept. In the 1960s, 1970s, some philosophers such as Michel Foucault already addressed this topic.
So the advancement of pharmaceutical industry, of the pharmaceutical industry, many medications being launched, and then medicalization starts. What is being medicalized? These issues that are inherent to life, that we all experience or in some point of life or many times in our lives: grief, sadness, anxiety, and insomnia. Do you think that we quickly, or do we always need to resort to medication for these situations? I'd like to make it clear here that I'm not talking against medication. Medication is important. They cure, they bring life to the individual again. They improve an individual's quality of life, increase the life expectancy. But we are discussing here is the treatment with medication that's wrongly applied, abusively applied. Another situation that's medicalized is performance. And in highly competitive societies such as the USA, for instance, Brazil is also like that. We experience similar situations. People are taking amphetamine to have better performance, to keep their jobs. Their colleague work 12 hours a day, 16 hours a day, based on amphetamines. And that person who works 10 hours per day does not have a performance that's as good as his colleagues, and he begins to use amphetamine to improve his focus, his attention, and keep his job. That I will even give you a tip. There's a movie, actually a documentary, called Take Your Pills. This documentary shows exactly what I'm talking about, and I strongly recommend you to watch it. You will acquire information in a fast manner, 1 hour and a half, and it's very, very well explained. So medicalization also includes performance here in Brazil as well. Now, I don't know if you can see, but I'd like to address the situation here for us to think together. We're talking about medicalization and treatment. Homosexuality was considered a mental disorder. It was considered a disorder from 1948 to 1990. It was even a SID number, a disease number, which is a code, the International Disease Classification Code. So no comments, right? So it's only to think, not to say anything. Okay? Another situation I believe it's interesting, that gray hair is also, it has all medication for it, so it also has a disease. So LM671, So gray hair also has its disease code. Dr. Federico, I'm so sorry, but I also have gray hair, but I dye my hair, so mamopsosis as well. When the women when they get flaccid, they due to breastfeeding or to age is also has a disease code. So these are only this is only food for thought. Another situation in which are bad habits. Do we need to medicalize bad habits? Or would it be best to change our habits? Well, in this life we lead, so always in a rush, we eat poorly, we eat late, we do not eat, or we eat too much. We food that is not real. It's not real food. And then we can gain weight, become obese, or become diabetic type 2, and then we will take medicine for that. The mobile phone, so you will sleep. So I want to ask you, who here, before you sleep, you get your phone and take a look? You don't do that. Wow, you are an example. Because people use their mobile phones like they were a bottle to sleep, and they spend 2 hours there looking at their mobile phones before they sleep. So on that graph that shows how we sleep little, we work a lot over 12 hours, above one meal a day, one decent meal a day, and sometimes not even that. And the mobile phone, I'm calculating around 2 hours, 4 hours per day with a mobile phone. So don't we need to reflect a little bit instead of taking medication for insomnia? Wouldn't it be interesting for us to change our habits a little bit? Harsha, he already used to say that we started to seek in medicalization the solution for our suffering, a fast solution for our sufferings, because we don't want to lose time reflecting. We want a magic pill. And not dealing with suffering, should we rethink about that? So should we rethink that strategy of not dealing with suffering? And why medicalization is a problem? Well, because medication is not a draw. It's not a candy. It brings problems to people, not only solutions. It can produce adverse reactions. It can produce harmful interactions or interactions that cause illnesses and health problems. I have a true story to tell you. A colleague of mine, we left our shift. She went home, went to her garage, and she twisted her ankle. She went to the doctor, and he prescribed an anti-inflammatory. That cost her 7 years of admission in 7 months. She had an adverse reaction to that anti-inflammatory, and she spent 7 months because she had a Stevens-Johnson syndrome. So she spent 7 months recovery in the hospital. So we cannot take medication without extremely needing it, and we must use it rationally. I will define to you one thing. The World Health Organization defines the rational use of medication, that use that is done under prescription, that is really needed. There is a disease to be treated during a specific and correct time, at the correct amount, and the most cost-effective way. So that's the rational use of medication. So, in fact, actually, medicalization is the non-rational use of medication. I will give you some examples of drugs involved in medicalization. I chose some classes of drugs, so amphetamines, opioids, benzodiazepinic, and Z drugs. Well, I just thought that, as I said, Z drugs, you were giving a tip to someone who was taking Z drugs. Sorry, I got confused. Too many people, right? Why did I choose these three classes of medication? Because they have something in common. They have a high tolerance and addiction risk. What is tolerance? I mean by when I say tolerance, I mean that that person needs increasingly higher doses to achieve the same result from that medication. So these medications, they can cause tolerance depending on how they are used, and cause dependence as well, addiction as well. So let's start with amphetamines. They are psychostimulators. I don't know if you have pharmaceutic people here. I don't know. I don't know what type of professionals are here. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about this field of mine. It's a psychostimulator. There's one that it's a very famous one, methylphenidato. It's the famous Ritalin. And that Ritalin, it's also used in a way that we must reflect about it. We are in doubt about the amount of diagnoses that are made, and Ritalin is prescribed. It's not a no-risk medication. It's a medication that can cause heart attack, high blood pressure, anxiety, depression, tolerance, addiction, and death, depending on how it is used, depending on the on self-medication. Of course, if the person has a serious diagnosis, that medication will improve the situation of that person or her performance or the life of the patient. We're not talking here about those cases. We're talking about indiscriminate use, irrational use. But it's important um, to everybody raise their awareness about that. In Brazil, 2 million people have been diagnosed with TDAH. This is data from 2024. Data from 2024 refer to previous years. So maybe now this number might be higher. That psychologist, Dr. Abraão, she noticed that ADHD. She developed work with 33 children, but the result was surprising. Was wow, because these 43 children with which she observed, they didn't have results with Ritalin, and she thought, let's redo this diagnosis because they had been diagnosed with ADHD. So they decided to make a new diagnosis and look at the results. Only 40 children confirmed the ADHD diagnosis. So only 3 had, 40 didn't have. So all of them were taking Ritalin, but only 3 of them actually needed. And they are usually prescribed to children, small children even. So, do you think these children weren't experiencing problems at home? Maybe those parents were disseminating among them a difficult situation or transmitting anxiety that was too much for a small child to deal with. Maybe that was the reason they were so agitated and anxious. So maybe it's the case of having ADHD, but sometimes it's not. So the goal of our lecture is to give you food for thought. Now here is a cartoon because teenagers use Ritalin as well. Sometimes they are diagnosed, and some of them abuse Ritalin. I don't know who here. You must be around my age, but you can imagine how old am I. So in the 1970s, there was the movie The Exorcist was launched. Who has watched it? There are many young people here, so I don't know if. Oh, we're here. Come on. So The Exorcist. So that's look how interesting. That main character, I don't remember her name. She was prescribed with Ritalin. Her doctor prescribed Ritalin to her, and Ritalin was launched in the 1950s, and in the 1970s, this film she was prescribed for possessions. As far as I remember, um, that was the cause for them giving Ritalin to her. That's only a curiosity, a curious fact. Have you ever watched this documentary, Take Your Pills? It's on Netflix, 1 hour and a half. I think it's worth watching it. The opioids. The opioids, they are prescribed for extremely severe pain. So, polytrauma, terminal diseases in general. Of course, there are some weird things. Many years ago, I haven't seen for a long time, and since the beginning of last century, they prescribed heroin for children. In the early 20th century. Let me speed up. So opioids, you must be very careful when using opioids, because it has to have prescription, time of usage, and time to get used to with not having it. So the epidemic of use of opioids in the U.S. I will not take long, but I will give you two tips. Watch Painkiller, which was translated as Império da Dor. Have you ever watched it? It's amazing. It's amazing. It's not a documentary. It's a film based on real facts. But you can later read. The main character is played by Captain America. So The Pharmacist as well is another very interesting. It's a documentary. Um, it's a very bad translation into Portuguese, but it also addresses the opioid crisis in the U.S. So this graph, I will talk very quickly about it. So the death for overdose in opioids in the U.S. I have information from the U.S. because they have a lot of problem with opioids. In the Second World War, in the Vietnam War, which ended in 1975, soldiers who came back home came back already addicted to opioids, morphine, heroin, etc. So things got more common there. This is data from the Department of Drug and Crimes of the UN. In 2019, there was a 94% increase in police seizing opioids, synthetic opioids, seized by the police, synthetic and semi-synthetics. Over 40% adults in the U.S. have lost someone to overdose, and 75% refer to opioids. Benzodiazepinical and drug Z drugs. These are drugs that I will start with the benzodiazepinical. It has it treats seizures. It used to be used for anxiety. Benzodiazepine. So it's used to treat people, how to help people sleep. The person can't sleep,
know if Dr. Federico will agree with me. There's a definition of insomnia is to actually have a restoring sleep at least 3 times a week for a long period. So the person, she might have a cause behind this type of insomnia. Of course, she needs to use it, okay, but she has to use it with discretion. And it can only be used for 2 months. If you used to use an anxiolytic, you can only use it for 2 months. The Z drugs are also hypnosis drugs. You know, these medications, they have high risks of tolerance to Z drug. You can only use for 1 month, and they're prescribed with quite large volume for elderly and can lead to cognitive problems and so on. So to sum up, Brazil is the second greatest consumer of this drug on the screen, the third largest consumer and sixth largest producer of the Z-Pan drugs in the world, and the sixth greatest consumer of medications in the world. Can we say Brazil is a country with insomnia? Maybe. But should we treat it with medication? Maybe changing habits instead of medicalizing? What is the population that is affected with medicalization? Children at school age, adolescents, and adults that are restricted and confined into an area. We know that in prisons there are lots of types of medications. People with graders older than 60, which houses that need mental health attention. Okay, all of that. Maybe medications need to be used, but with discretion. So we are all affected. We all want to pass the 60 years of age, and we might receive some type of medication of this black label medications. It says this medication causes addiction, and so all of us are subject to it. Factors that contribute to medicalization: technology, which enables the discovery of a new pharmacies of new medications. With the improvement of technology, the pharmaceutical industry wants to produce new drugs. So it provides research in the development of medication, spending billions in this, and it's a very powerful industry. One of them, which I will not say the name, is among the 10 biggest market value companies in the world. The pharmaceutical industry, there's a 2018 article that says some pharmaceutical industries spend more in propaganda than in research and development per se. So one can imagine how sophisticated propaganda is to pay so much for that. It has to be really good when we don't even notice. Propaganda is conducted for the one that is being prescribed, and the one who will prescribe, to the media for the consumer, to the person that it's going to prescribe with the sales reps. You know, the propaganda that we see on the large media, the mainstream, are medication without labels, because you cannot do black label medication propaganda on the media. But there are medications that are not black label that can also cause problems, so consequences to the person and the society. So unnecessary treatment create a thing that we as pharmacists understand that should not be used if not needed. As we get older, we have more problems, and in the end, when we notice, we're already taking 5-6 medications to control these problems that come with age. And with most medications, there are greater adverse effects and can cause other health problems, can lead to kidney problems. So we believe that There should be a clearing in this sense. This is type of work we do at Farmusp and several pharmaceutical, which is to deprescribe in conjunction with with doctors. Tolerance and addiction lead to unemployment, poverty, social problems, family problems. If you know someone that is addicted to medication, you know what I'm talking about. High costs to individuals and society. The rational use of medication has been defined. Demedicalization is what we need. And the World Health Organization estimates that over half the medications are prescribed in an inappropriate way, and that half the patients use them in an incorrect way because the patient might decide to use it or not. That's his decision. And sometimes it takes more or takes less. And in Brazil, medications also are the largest cause of the greatest cause of intoxications according to the National System of Toxicology Formations. How could we help to demedicalize with public health policies, public health and education policy, inhibiting medication propaganda, even if they don't have a label? There's a substance called endorphinine that is in several medications that don't have labels and that are potentially inappropriate for the elderly. It's a muscle relaxer. It might cause dizziness, fall, fracture, admission to hospitals, and death. It can happen. We know of several cases. How could we demedicalize and stimuli? And you cannot see well, but it says, I took a picture. I took a picture of this drugstore. Buy 2 boxes and take the third one for free. It looks, it's as if they were selling a cream cracker. Medication is not merchandise. So maybe we could make the consumers aware at the labels of the risks of indiscriminate use. But it does say that in black label medications. You say, okay, but I don't think it's not producing any results. Do you remember that in Brazil we used to smoke a lot? There were certain campaigns against smoking. And why don't we smoke that much anymore? Because of public policies that made the cigarette boxes showing cancer patients and several other public policies. So why don't they put pictures on the boxes of medications that cause addiction with patients at extreme cases of addiction that you know what it is like? So intensify policies to demedicalize for health professionals and others, people that prescribe, other health professionals that prescribe doctors. So contests to help how to unprescribe, to help doctors how to unprescribe, and also teach what is to rationally use medication. And here I link this to our work at Farmusp, introducing in the curriculum education on the rational use of medication since primary school until high school. Our work at Farmusp, a bit of it now. I'll give you a hint of it. Here's the University of São Paulo. Some of you might know it, some might not. We're in the middle of those trees over there, the Farmusp, that is the University Pharmacy. We work on pharmaceutical care, which is treating in a humane way of the patient from hosting him, lodging him, to analysis of prescriptions, reviews of pharmacotherapy, Basically, we adopt the patient and do whatever we can within the pharmaceutical area. Pharmaceutical visits with interns at Farmuspi and professionals. We take the patient to hospital. We show how they should intake because it's patients with prostate cancer. Certain campaigns that we carry out, such as the rational use of medications in several systems. This shows the importance of us introducing education on the correct use of medication at a very early age so that children are not victims, such as the Snow White was a victim of certain witches that are loose. And the link is 1 second and I'll conclude, 2 seconds and I'll conclude. This is the picture of we acting with our interns. We're taking the picture there and teaching small children at the age of 6 to 7 what medication is. Medication is not candy. It's not candy, and we learn through theater, storytelling. We began a pilot last year in 2024. We had the first class with this at this age, first year, first school year, and then we had this theater where the peacock lost all his feathers because he took the wrong medication that another animal prescribed to him. And through this type of storytelling, the children learn things and take away what they learned home. And here we have the space of the elderly at FAMUSPI. It can be used. It's public. Anyone can go in there to exercise. Here are the references that I used. And this is the question that I asked at the beginning. And take it home and answer when you think it's an opportune time to answer it. Are you medicalizing your life? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ana Luisa. Excellent presentation. Excellent presentation. I'd just like to make a comment. I'm in from the advertising area, and we receive a book, a yearly book about the publicitary investments made. I'm a partner at BB. The last 20 years, the 5 main investors of advertising and propaganda, which are called great media, TV, and internet, has always been alcohol industry, pharmacy industry, and bets. In the past 2 years, bets is ranking first. Way high, not only in propaganda but also in trade, which are the sponsorships, especially football. So it's difficult to fight against these guys. Now, Dr. Paulo, your turn. Thank you. Good afternoon. Look at me sometimes because I'm going to show you the time tracking paper. Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for being here. Brief summary and how this class was created. It's enchanting to see the lectures about emotional regulation, human complexity, but it's also very interesting to see complexity. And there is this concern about integrality. I was having coffee with Gisele today, and Gisele said, Dr. Paula, we had several problems with this panel, with 2 lecturers, but if I had thought, I would have called you. And I said, why, I'm here. Call me, and I'll do it. And that's what I did. I prepared this class, and I'll bring you interesting things. My cause is combating the tobacco industry and the denormalization of the tobacco industry. Denormalizing it is as important as fighting against the use of tobacco. So Anna was talking about the influence of the pharmaceutical industry, and we should be concerned about because I'm a professor. I need to make my disclosure. I see things with great concern, as Anna put it. The only industry I work with is I have a educational bias, and we're trying to expand. We don't have a minimum curriculum on tobacco use for doctors at university, and that's a concern because the student was not exposed during his undergraduate years. Then he will not probably approach it until unless he has this luck of coming to Freemind. And so there's the paper of the commercial drivers of health. While we fight to know how we should approach, how we should create groups with parents and motivate, for if you have any problem with English, there's even a translation into Portuguese. So here you can take pictures, and it's worth it because it will open your mind and you can see how results in health is impacted negatively due to these big sharks, and the tobacco industry is one of these big sharks. I'll tell you an interesting story which happened in San Francisco in May 1994. Glantz is a researcher of the University of California, San Francisco, and he went to work. He went to work at the university, and there was this box with 3,000 pages of secret documents of the industry. It was a outsourced party working for one of the industries and left as a gift for Senton Blends a large volume of documents of the activities of Brown and Williamson throughout 30 years. So this activity led to several things. First of all, Stanton Blends came together with several people that worked with him, Lisa Barry and so on, published this book, The Cigarette Papers, and also published at the Journal of the Medical Association of the United States. But they're interesting in certain aspects. They decided to go into court against the industry, and by going to court against the industry, they managed to have the documents produced by the industry be made available, and even beyond, the ADA made these documents public, and by making these documents public, we were able to make a very clear distinction between the external facade of the industry. Do you recognize this symbol, guys? Who recognizes this? What is the company? Look. So here we have the external facade of the industry, an industry that is responsible with a controversy industry. While the internal documents, look what the companies would say. I'm going to tell you why I like working with this. Tobacco you sell for 1 year, it's addictive, and it's makes the consumer very loyal. So they conceal their name. So this symbol became a company called Bet Brasil, and that no one remembers, but whose company name is still one of the four big sharks. To make a provocation, you know that the industries, I always prefer to consult portfolios made for the shareholders to see what they're going to do. So you have the nicotine strategy. When you think of cannabis legalization, look at what the industry talks since the 1970s. Smoking a cannabis is a natural expansion of the current tobacco usage. If a more tolerant use was made before cannabis, we would make lots and lots and lots of money because we know how to make people addicted. So that you can have an idea the importance of youth. We know this is a document. We know that industry would catalog the government documents. Appendix B of government documents say less than 1/3 of smokers start at an early age. So the work of the industry is to make young people addicted.
And here to do so, they must recruit women, young people, so youth. So this has been recently released. Is its plans of Ju for Brazil? We don't have much investigative journalism here in Brazil, but one of our good investigative journalists is o Joio e o Trigo. So Ju, this is the e-cigarette. It evaluated launching this low cost vape in Brazil. They conducted several interviews, market research to know how the market works. This is called Brazil Deep Dive. This was made available in September, so you are extremely updated in relation to that. So they know the bars are the main place where people buy vape. So they did an entire planning to launch that in bars. They knew very well the profile of the Brazilian smoker. So it's not good to see because the low document quality is usually a man, urban man, middle-aged man, who has less schooling. So they even know the age group. Who smokes more in Brazil? So those who receive less than 1/4 to a half minimum wage. So they said, for us to launch Ju in the Brazilian market, we must launch an e-cigarette that's cheaper. So I will show you how the success cases. I mean, from Ju in the United States to and Paulo knows that very well. The design of product, the nicotine delivery, flavors, and the marketing of the industry. So these four are what attract American youth and transformed Ju in a true fever. So both in the US and Brazil, when we look at young people, they're all holding an iPhone. iPhone is very simple to use. It's a graphic interface. It's very easy to use. So what happened? Apple launched an iPhone, and the Juul marketing guys used to say, we're going to be the iPhone of e-cigarettes. So they launched the same colors, colorful models. So Paulo, you're crazy. This is conspiracy theory. Well, when Apple launched iPhone Gold, shortly after, Juul launched a limited edition which was called Blush Gold. So this is extremely intentional you can pair your iPhone with your Juul. Another example, silver iPhone and silver Juul. Another one, blue navy iPhone and blue navy Juul. For you to have an idea how these pod devices work, they have these carts, which are these pods containing the liquid. They fit it in the electronic device, and they have high concentrations of nicotine. So take a look at what happened with e-cigarettes and up to third generation. I'm sorry. They use alkaline nicotine. Alkaline nicotine is not good. It makes a sore throat. So if you increase this too much, you cannot inhale it. So it's literally you cannot hold it. You cannot breathe it. So if they didn't increase the nicotine concentration, people didn't use. The maximum concentration is 25 milligrams, but the most popular is 18 milligrams per milliliter. So those who didn't see, me and Anna, we are, let's give Netflix series for people to watch. Watch Big Vape. You have the interviews with many important people. So they got those secret documents of the industry and said there was already research with salt and nicotine. They can use lactic acid. In the case of Juul, they use a benzoic acid. For you to have an idea, the benzoic acid, when it becomes hot, becomes benzene. And benzene is cancer, it develops cancer, level 1. I'm able to get more nicotine with nicotine salt. So here's a rain of cigarettes for you to see. One pack of cigarettes has 20 cigarettes. One pod, regular flavor, has 60 milligrams of nicotine. Therefore, 3 packs of cigarettes. What happens when a product it's very successful? Reverse engineering. So why a jewel has so appeal and so much appeal in the market? They did construct a jewel to identify. So they launched fixed with, and one pod is equivalent to 75 cigarettes, and pseudoring and one pod represents 90% of cigarettes or 90 cigarettes. So it's a lot of nicotine. Did you take pictures? This is nice to post. So another aspect I wanted to call your attention to. We are in the middle of prevention and prevention, drug treatment and prevention. As a pneumologist, I can say to you, you can get used to see inhalable drugs as a way of using drugs. We can think that a heavy way of using drug is injecting heroin in our on us. You saw that when Coach Cobain here came, he had a withdrawal syndrome on stage. It's a heavy way of using drugs. So cigarette was the most powerful way of producing nicotine addiction. What these studies show, this black line is cigarette, and the dotted line is Juul cigarette. So Juul cigarette was super powerful in causing nicotine addiction. They reached a nicotine level with e-cigarettes much higher than Juul was able to. So in addition, the capacity of a drug creating addiction is due to two factors. One, its intrinsic ability, capacity of creating, and the how fast they get to the central nervous system. If I inject nicotine on my vein, it doesn't get as fast to my brain as when I smoke it. So it gets faster to my brain. Therefore, it creates more addiction, more dependence. So Juul cigarette takes 4 minutes to produce the peak level in people's blood, and while conventional cigarette it takes 6 minutes. So what people from statistics do? So there's no statistical difference between 4 and 6 minutes, but there's clinical difference. To reach one person's brain faster and peaking 2 minutes earlier, it's the on and off that Frederico always mentions, which is very important to produce addiction. This is very significant. In other words, Juul found a cigarette 4.0 because it has more nicotine than regular cigarettes. See what Adam Moe says. No product that I've known in the market that has as much a cigarette as ours. Later, others copied it. And there's another problem, which is the nicotine salts, which ended those bad feeling when it was inhaled and became soft. And they use menthol, flavors, nice flavors. And that's another story of those secret documents. They show, for instance, that they were concerned with producing, at the time, a cigarette that was Coke flavored, Coca-Cola flavored, so they could put ingredients that replicate the aroma and flavor of Coca-Cola. So the document is named New Concepts for Youth Cigarettes. So remember that recruiting young people is essential for the industry. So apples have something that's fresh and nice good for you. So I can relate it to Apple and say cigarettes is good for you. Another thing, they already knew, for instance, that teenagers like sweet products. So take a look at what happens. So sweet flavor for everything, especially calls the special attention of teenagers. So they become very interested in it. So there's a Dutch group that studied, and there are 20,000 flavors and smells of e-cigarettes. So the teenager will get that sweet flavor they like. So here you can see, oh, I'm having problems with this. Wow. So fruit flavors here. So fruits are very popular. You have berries, citrus, tropical, dessert flavored, creme brulee flavored. You have all of that. And here are the aromas, the scent, the smell. It's the same thing. Someone was trying to take a picture. Did you take it? And here there are the aromas. So desserts and fruit. So sweet flavor is something that young people like. So that's an interesting American campaign. Remember McDonald's? McDonald's has that meal for children. So the tobacco industry has a kids menu as well. So Paulo, this is from DBR. DBR is a company that does marketing research to launch products for young people. It's the main marketing researcher aimed at young people in the world. So in the industry that makes Juul, commissioned a research with young people to know which are the flavors that were more appealing. So mango, mint, etc. What did the industry do? Launched traditional flavors, and it must be colorful and nice with the flavors that young people will like. Here's to show you how the interface not using social media to promote the product, this produced this fever effect. So to call our attention, our concern is that e-cigarettes, this orange line was a research conducted in England in 2023, but it's basically reproduced everywhere in the world. 54% of people who have never smoked and think e-cigarettes are attractive. And what the e-cigarettes does for the industry is amazing. They increase the global nicotine market. They increase threefold or fourfold. So Federico will talk about the group thing. You know about that. So if other people are using something, then I will use it as well. This Juul campaign is called Vaporize. That campaign, you can see it's demographics for men, women, Afro-American, as Asian. The Times Square in the 1930s, you had a camel ad, and there was a camel smoking, and they held launch parties, which was basically the following: giving free samples of Juul and free drinks for children and adolescents. That would happen in those Juul launch parties. So this is the use of social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, with those hashtags, the use of ambassadors for the brand. And an interesting thing as well is how did they develop those campaigns and why? This is a magazine, a journal that publishes things about medical informatics, and they used big data. So it's a study done by artificial intelligence, and they studied over 560 images to see when they were going to make posts in social media, what engaged more and what generated more comments and likes and etc. What did they do? E-liquids, a device, a person using a device, etc. And what did they see? That what engaged more were people using the product. So that's why in the launch parties of Juul, they had a booth, a photo booth, and people were there having a great time, having a blast, and took pictures. So these marketing campaigns were used by all of them. And you have here an example in Japan. So it was used both by Souza Cruz and Philip Morris and other markets. So this is to show you how the industry is evil. These are part of the new secret documents. So this is the Juul's influencer program. And you can see Katy Perry. Katy Perry is a part of the jury of the American Idol. She's a pop singer. And she used to be a key person to reach the industry. So the secret documents show what they did to get to Katy Perry. What did they do? They got her hairdresser and gave him a sample. They make him an addict to Juul and told her, take that to Katy Perry. And Katy Perry, she's an influencer for young women, success and beauty and charm and etc. And she has a boyfriend who's Orlando Bloom. He's a Hollywood sweetheart. And then they are at the Golden Globes and at parties. And she shows up doing free marketing for Juul since she became an addict. One more example, Miley Cyrus, whom you know. She had a program at Disney called Hannah Montana. So they tried to recruit Miley Cyrus because she appears in a children's channel and recruit important people. So I did a parallel to between e-cigarettes campaign and the old campaign. So associate with charm, independence. Take a look at how they're similar, how these images are very similar. We have here e-cigarettes and regular cigarettes ads from the past. So makers, they create the demand, and we've seen all these items. To call your attention once more, another tip of a nice film. This is a lobby person for the tobacco industry. Thank you for smoking. And he ends up being hired by the alcohol and gun law industry to do lobby in the American Congress. This is a joke I put on my Instagram for what show the Xuxa is this to play with reduction of damage versus increase of damage. In the morning roundtable, I'm going to talk a little bit demystify what the industry has built as a fallacy. And for those who are from the health field, this will be launched on the 12th. It's called Name Vape. There will be 3 chapters. I write chapters about cardiovascular and respiratory. There will be a chapter on mental health and another on oral health. So it will be launched on an event on the 12th. So people from Main Vape do not have a web link, but you can see online, and there will be a physical book that will be sold. In short, my colleague, e-cigarettes or regular cigarettes, you don't want to have 2 addictions. So no smoking, no vaping. Thank you very much. Great, Paulo. You were amazing. Dr. Federico, your turn. You have the floor. Please change the presentation, Pablo. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you, the Freemind team. Giselle, she's this organization's right arm, feet, and everything. Last year, I ended up a dear person, and I couldn't come. So it's nice to come here again and have this new opportunity to talk about this project that's very dear to us. It's even funny because what Paulo said, it's a concept that exists for a long time, these industrial epidemics. So the industry treats that as externalities. One of the days I was giving an interview in Tatiara Radio, and the president of the National Association of Bets was there. 70% of the market is in Brazil, and etc. And I was speaking and said the problem of the bets is not the issue of addiction. That's one issue, of course. We'll always have that. 1 out of 10 will start playing and will be addicted. The problem is that you will get income from those who don't have enough income. You will get food. You will remove food from those who don't have food, and you remove their expectation, etc. And the chair who was there, he was wearing an Austin T-shirt and all modern, and Paulo will understand the strategy behind that interview. And he said, no, but that's an externality, a negative externality. It's not a problem. We will address that in a simple way, and we'll control that, control the hard player, and etc. But Paulo also knows that whenever you put a verb in the imperative in an ad, we do not mean that we want people to do what we are saying. We're telling them to do. So when we say drink responsibly, you don't have an option. You have to drink. So gamble responsibly, it's the same thing. You don't have an option. And treating those issues as externalities, and externalities are when you have a bad consequence and you cannot predict that in a business or in a company or in a service you provide, but it happens. Is it says as if we didn't know about the risk of addiction or indebtedness, in spite of having over 50 years of data published about that. So it's another issue, and I think that this Congress theme is very important. It's very interesting, mission or omission, because it's an issue that we must think about and think better about. Because these epidemics, these industrial epidemics, they happen because somehow we are being we are not acting. From what? Because well-known risk factors for health, they are still integrated in our lives. So alcohol is an example. So armed weapons at home, it's an example, and we know that these things will go bad, go wrong at some point. Still, we are still, we are in doubt. So isn't it a good idea to have a Glock weapon in my house, a Glock gun? Maybe I might need to shoot a burglar, but what if my daughter plays with it and shoots her head?
We cannot omit. It's our mission to fight against these industries, these death industries. The professor mentioned the excess of medications. All this has to be reviewed. Clarice Cocker Research is a mission I have, which I began when I came back from France, when I concluded my PhD. When I came back to Brazil, Dr. Laranjeira was screaming out about all changes that were happening in Brazil. He started smoking cocaine and not just snorting cocaine. And why did this youth get lost in their addiction to cocaine? My work in neurology is how to modulate our antibodies to help our mental health. I worked at a group that did this with bacteria by modifying the floral intestine, and understand why people had some symptoms of depressions and food disorders and others did not. And when I came back to Brazil and got the job at the Federal University, this project to get the job at the university was the vaccine project. I did not create the idea of using a vaccine to treat a chemical addiction. This idea is a bit older than that. It began at the beginning of the 19th, when they're trying to understand why so many people use so much drugs and do not die despite of that. There's the idea that comes from pharmacology, which is downregulation. Our neurons remove the receptors from that somehow is overstimulated, but due to an error of a lab error, a doctor understood that people that use a large amount of cocaine use a large amount of antibody also to protect or to avoid the effect of the drug on that people, and that is valid for opioids, cocaine, nicotine, and anti-cancer medications, and several other medications. So from that on, the idea was, if the own body is trying to defend itself by using the autoimmune system, can we also use this anti-immune system to treat this type of addiction and disease? So then a very dramatic situation happened in my out-of-patient clinic at the Hospital of Clinics, where the public prosecutor's office of Minas Gerais said every pregnant woman that goes to a doctor visit in the class that uses drugs, this doctor needs to mandatorily notify the public prosecutor's office, because at the end of the pregnancy, if this woman will have the right to keep her baby or not. Wow, what an amazing, it's an idea of protecting the baby. But we know that chemical addiction at the time of pregnancy is a great dilemma for the mother and also a great motivation. Well, a type of rule like this cannot discuss. Then the obstetrician of the hospital, of the clinic's hospital, started sending women that use drugs to my outpatient clinic by van. So the fans would go to my clinics with this woman. We have to treat this because we want to feed these babies, and this became a problem for us. So this was the second main trigger, because when this rule was adopted, I was with a colleague and talking with a colleague of mine about the ethical issues of the vaccine. There's an entire ethical issue of the vaccine. If if you provide preventive vaccine, you would be making people not be able to choose if they want to feel the effects of the drugs. So it's like I joked with my mother, oh my god, I'm preventing the person from itching if she has some type of chicken pox. So, well, we started discussing this ethical issue, which was very emblematic and clear. The baby doesn't choose to use drugs. So it could be part of the role of protecting, the idea of protecting this baby, and the vaccine could protect this. How this was very sensibilized me a lot. As who doesn't know, cocaine is a vasoconstrictor drug. That's why some users have this fissure, like a hole on one side of the nose because of this type of constriction in the vase. And whenever someone snorts cocaine, cocaine closes these arteries. When they're closed chronically, it leads to the death of the skin, and the death of the skin can lead to the person losing this cartilage. And it's the same effect happens with this very important organ, which the placenta. The placenta is a network of veins and arteries that exchange oxygen and between the of nutrients and oxygens, and transfer these nutrients and oxygens to the baby from the mother. And whenever a mother is pregnant and consumes cocaine and crack, this baby will receive less oxygen and nutrients. In terms of obstetric views, by closing these arteries, the placenta gets displaced, and there a greater risk of internal bleeding, of miscarriage, and if that doesn't happen, there are perinatal consequences. The baby will receive the same amount of cocaine that is in the blood of this woman who used the cocaine. This concentration of cocaine will make the baby receive less nutrients and oxygen, so these babies have an intrauterine growth that is reduced. They are smaller when they born. They are born in withdrawal of the drugs, and when they develop, they have a greater risk of being a dependent, about 40 to 50%, a risk of having attention deficit, a development deficit, and it's a great tragedy for the mother and the baby using the drug. And it's not something that of course, we're going to be sensibilized by it. And to understand the vaccine, we have to understand this story. Dora Volk is reviewing her concept. She's the person that contributed a lot for us to understand what is this dependency, this addiction. Chemical addiction is the only psychiatric disease that you can prevent. What do you mean, Frederico? It's the only disease that we know the cause factor. If you don't expose yourself to the cause factor, you will not have the risk of being addicted. So this circuit is called a reward circuit in a wrong way. And why is it a wrong name for it? Because it's a survival circuit. Its role is to increase our chances to eat, drink, and have sex. And so that we have greater chances of surviving and continue with our species. When we find these cues, this system puts us in an alert state, looking for what we're going to do, where we will find these things that we have to do. I like talking about the picanha effect. If we were at India, walking with Gandhi, and we smelled the smoke of meat being cooked or something. It would probably be the meat of a dead person, and especially the first time you felt the smell of burnt picanha, you probably also chose and had the smell of burnt meat. But when you put a really big picanha beef in your mouth, the smell will leave a message in our hippocampus that whenever we feel the smell of dead meat, instead of being disgusted, we want to find out where it is and have a piece. So they associate coups that have nothing to do with one another or things that we don't want or need, but somehow gives us this message that to survive we need to be alert and look for these things. What acts in these circuits? Usually there's stimuli, and there's a little region in our brain which produces a neurotransmitter, which is dopamine. All drugs, regardless where they act in the brain, will increase dopamine, put us in this alert state, make us record these memories, and when we activate these memories, we will search for the drug, which you call compulsion or something like that. So I admit the person, I won't let her or him use drugs, having other stimuli, other perspectives, but when at the first relapse, the person reactivates the circuit and things begins as it was before. Very common with people that work with admissions, therapeutic communities. The challenge is not in the clinic. The challenge is the first days, the person not relapsing, because you're taking the person out of that bubble and goes back to the sea and will find the sharks and so on. So the person needs to have great self-esteem and resilience and willpower not to relapse. So that's why we had the idea of the vaccine. What is this idea? If you could get the cocaine, which usually goes through this obstacle in our brain, if I'm able to block them in the blood in the blood that goes through us and impedes this passage, I would be able to not have this reactivation right at the first days after admission, and the greater chance of this person to continue and follow the protocol it committed to. There's some very funny stories. I remember I needed to get cocaine, which is the base, is the substance that is the base to produce the vaccine is cocaine. So I probably made 80 calls, hundreds of emails to see who in Anvisa or the federal police could tell me where to get this cocaine, until a person that from my family said, well, maybe this place will help you. So I went several times. So I went to the toxic court. Every time I went to the toxics court, sometimes I would reach the place and no one was there, and the court clerk would say, well, the judge isn't here today, but I will give you the address of this point of sale where you can buy this drug. So this is one of the challenges that we had. So the initial idea was to create a prototype of a vaccine that was similar to what Americans did, to be able to try an application that was completely new. There's no way of providing prevention of the second generation in psychiatry. So the idea of using vaccine intrauterine prevention through vaccine was very tempting because that's the only way to do it. So that's why how I could access cocaine and convince a chemical a colleague that is a chemist to help me, and we reached a molecule which is called calyx cock, which is the formula of this molecule, but we developed a new molecule which is already patented in the name of the University of Minas Gerais. Though then we first developed the first step, a proof of concept. Does this molecule work? And we were able to show that when we use this new molecule that we call V4N2, we're able to produce a greater concentration of antibodies in comparison to the other group that used placebo, and a greater concentration because than the vaccines that the Americans used as reference, which is very important, which is the first sample of what we could do. So producing antibodies is not enough. I need to stop the passage of cocaine through the cephalic mass, and I give some cocaine marked with radiation, and I'm able to measure the amount of cocaine that passes through the animals. This is a rat, so you can see his claws, this white dots is where I have a large concentration of cocaine marked by irradiation. This is the control group. This is the group treated with a vaccine, and we see in these three images that there is a very important difference in the amount of irradiation that goes to the brain. This amount, when we actually crush this tissue, there's a significant reduction of the quantity of radiation in the brain, and the animals regarding the animals that were vaccinated and there are animals that were not, and a significant difference also in the blood of these animals. So it didn't go to the brain, it stayed in the blood, and that's what we wanted. In terms of behavior, I'm not going to show the chart, but image it. Rats and rodents, they are shy. They don't like moving through open spaces. So when they receive the cocaine, they get less shy and they start, making several rounds in places. So here you have the image representing how many places they went to and how much they displaced, and then you have the rat that was vaccinated. So which shows there's a decrease and a difference between the rats that were vaccinated and the ones that were not, and that's a very important advantage. When we made this concept test, we did not have much experience in relation to the development of new drugs. The idea was not to advance in this sense, to register this medication. We wanted much more to show that it was useful, but the results were so motivational that we tried to register this medication with Anvisa, who knows actually create the vaccine. So we decided to make a formula of the vaccine that would be in accordance with the technical norms. The formula that we used in the test of concept is the same one that we used to do the tuberculosis vaccine, but if I'm going to use it for human beings, then this would be thrown away because the immune response would be different than the one that we used for tuberculosis. So that's why I contacted a colleague that works with pharmacies, and we tested several things that is published in this article to see which formula would be best. Out of these 7 formulations, we reach a specific formulation with an adjuvant that is very simple, where most parts of vaccine used today to enable the registration with Anvisa, and that was also make it easier for us to provide these tests. Out of these studies, to me, the one that I like the most is this study, which is published in a journal of the Nature group, that understood that this proposal of prevention, perinatal prevention, would be a very innovative prevention. So they decided to publish this article of ours. So what we did here, this chart sums up everything well. First, we got mouse that female mouse that were sexually mature and put them to mate after they mated with male mice, and we saw when the mice the when after they mate, and then you are able to inject daily in these mice a dose of cocaine, which is what a woman would use in terms of weight of what a person uses at a party. So they got cocaine when they got pregnant until the day they had the little mice. And when they had their little mice, we counted the number of mice they had, and they let them feed, and we counted how many mice were left after they stopped feeding these little mice, and we evaluated what happened with these little mice in terms of antibodies and response to cocaine. And the greatest thing of this study is that we didn't stop there. We paused, we gave a break for this female mice to recover from this pregnancy. We mated it again, injected cocaine again throughout the pregnancy, and we counted the little mice at birth and at feeding. So if I vaccine these mice and leave her loose, and then she get pregnant again, and she get inject the cocaine, will the vaccine work again? So I would have two different periods to find out if this vaccine is effective in the first and in the second pregnancy, with a period between both where she did not use. So the vaccine is something that is not ours. So our autoimmune system would probably reject the fetus unless the autoimmune system would low down between pregnancy. And that's the problems we have the use of vaccines, because vaccination depends of this immune response being working in a correct way. That's why we do toxoplasmosis tests before getting pregnant and not during. During, that's not possible. And that was a risk of a vaccine not working in such a situation. Another problem is that cocaine generates a certain information which generates a natural answer of the autoimmune systems. But a paradox is that our answer was completely what we expected, different from the male mice. The female mice, they would produce 1,000 more antibodies against cocaine than the male mice, and this happened throughout pregnancy.
This happened throughout the entire study, even when we stopped the exposure to cocaine. The second thing is that the cocaine decreases the appetites when so the person eats less, which is a malnutrition factor for these fetuses on the belly. So these black are the vaccinated rats, and the white ones are the non-vaccinated ones. So it's statistically significant, the difference between the more critical pregnancies between among the compared between the vaccinated and the non-vaccinated pregnant rats. So in addition, it decreased the effect of the cocaine and decreased and increased the appetite. So they ate better. So regarding the critical moments, which are equivalent to the third trimester, the third quarter of pregnancy, we see a very important difference, which will result in babies that is 35% larger among vaccinated mice, both in vaccination, both in birth and lactation. And we have a huge amount of antibodies in breast milk. These antibodies that were produced by the rat were anti-cocaine and much less specific to. But this one is the most important. What do you come? I will protect the mother from the effects. She ate more, she gained weight, and she had more babies during, even though she was exposed to cocaine. But what happened to the babies when they're born? So here's the data. In fact, we know that the mother transmits antibodies through the placenta and through breast milk. When I stop breastfeeding, the antibodies will naturally drop, and that's what happened with these babies. So when these babies no longer breastfeed, if I inject cocaine, they they do not. So the babies of the mice that were not vaccinated, when they receive cocaine, they will walk that much here, and the way they are vaccinated, they walk just this little bit. So I am able to inhibit the effect of the drugs also in the second generation. So this brings benefits to them, because we know that breastfeeding is a critical period for these mothers, and when they are breastfeeding, though these babies, rat babies, were protected from the effects of the cocaine. A student of mine will study the effects of that in the long term. I mean, if we will prevent the negative consequences throughout the development of those offspring, and I expect to bring results in a while. But for me, it's a great, because we did for the first time prevention inside the womb. So we prevented negative consequences from exposure to drugs. Well, simultaneously, we continue doing the preclinical safety evaluation, and today we have 2 papers published or in the process of being published. So we did in the entire process to comply with Anvisa, so there are no results that compromise the clinical studies, both regarding different toxins, and we use the non-human primate model to conduct our tests. So these are monkeys, right? But we end up using Miku, and Miku almost made me pay a Miku, be embarrassed. He almost embarrassed me. So the vaccine, even though used in high doses, it does not produce any effects according to biological indicators. But we have an interesting situation here. In the US, they have labs to produce primates to use in these. So here, IBAMA forbids us from raising them. So we need to get them after they are seized. So they got a Miko in the middle of the forest, or it was being smuggled, and then we use those little monkeys to make science. Thank God we have this alternative. So the vaccine that only caused the only issue is that in the place where we injected, it caused this. But these white dots, the American who reviewed the article asked me, what are these white dots? Are these tissue lesion? No, that was rest of parasites. These they caught in the jungle. And when we treated, we have the scars over there. So I almost was embarrassed, because they almost did not want to publish my article because of that. But I was able to convince them and explain what happened, and I could proceed. So the vaccine today is being continued by a managing group in UFMG. But behind the vaccine, there are great discoveries I made, and there's a dream behind it that's much more important than the vaccine itself. I know that the vaccine is very important, but there was a discovery, an interesting discovery. Last year in May, the governor Tarcísio asked me to go to his residence, to his office, to understand better about the vaccine and see if he could do that in São Paulo. So it was very interesting, because I was questioned by a committee of scientists from USP, Unicamp, Unifesp, and FAPESP, Butantan Institute. So nearly 2 hours of of questioning, of trying to play capoeira from one side to the other, trying to defend my thesis. It was even fun to go through that. But at the end, I remember that Hamuch, who's the vice governor, he was here in the opening ceremony. Great. So he was conducting the meeting, chairing the meeting. He told everyone there, he said, will São Paulo be able to solve history? Unicamp, no. Unifesp, no. USP, no. Butantan. I might try to do something like that, trying to say something. So when he had lunch, he asked me, so professor, will you be able to solve our problem here in São Paulo? I joked. When GM starts to do a Tostini's cookie, I will do that. So and I had an insight, why couldn't I do the vaccine and make progress with the vaccine in the richest state in the country? The answer was simple, because in Brazil, we can't do what I want to do. So behind the vaccine, there's another desire, which is the following. Actually, President Fernando Henrique signed a treaty, which is a harmonization treaty for good lab practices and good practices in fabrication of medication. So the idea was great, and he wanted to put Brazil in OCDE, and that was important. He only forgot to tell the Russians. And the Russians is us, because we don't have infrastructure in Brazil to be able to make small batches of drugs adapted to the international norms. So this is a bottleneck for us, because to be able to produce that batch, we needed $1.5 million to hire an American company where I could give a cake formula, which took shortly 2 months to be built, and they would give me the substance I needed, and then they would keep the formula to then, and when it became generic, maybe they could use it. So what does that mean? It means that Brazil, I cannot today produce new drugs to cater to the needs of our citizens. And that's a great challenge. What does that mean? What does that mean? Because we do not have medication sovereignty. We depend on international industry to provide solutions for us. And when I started to talk about that, it was great, because how many patents do you have in UFMG? How many patents do we have in Fiocruz and etc.? There are many, many. And the huge problem is that that bottleneck makes us not being able to overcome that issue of pharmaceutical development in Brazil. Beyond that, we have the industry. But the industry in Brazil today, it consumes foreign salts. It brings most salts that are used here. So it uses here and puts in capsules and tablets and sell it to us. So there's no way. So behind the vaccine, so it's my dream to be able to have in this lab with good lab practice and good producing norms that are able to create these small labs in Brazil, so then we can help other researchers to make progress in their projects and make our own medication. So we use that for simple problems such as tuberculosis, toxoplasmosis, leishmaniasis. The same medications were developed in Europe and the US using in the 40s and 60s. Why didn't we make progress? Because the patents are inside the drawers of Fiocruz, needing either $1.5 million or that structure to be able to move forward. So in addition to talking about the vaccine, since we're going to advertise here, this is a project that's very important and strategic for our country, because of that, we will be able to value the work of our researchers and of our universities and add value to our pharmaceutical industry, train highly qualified human resources that are much needed, and stop exporting the mountain and start to export medication which have the same added value as the mountain. So That's very important. So I invite you all, in addition to talking about vaccines, I invite you all to talk about that infrastructure, which is fundamental for us to develop throughout the next year and make progress so that our children can live in a better world, especially a drug-free world, and especially with alternatives to get treatment. Thank you very much to Freemind. I'm at your disposal. Thank you very much, Dr. Frederico. It was an amazing presentation. We know that you won a prize in Europe 1 year ago, and you won a prize in Europe recognizing the investment of and gained 5,000 euros to develop research. But we see millions and millions in bills and amendments that are sometimes used in a way that's not needed. And we look at what you have just showed us and what we need to do. And reading again the mission and omission of society, Freemind is always at that forefront, the avant-garde of what we must do. When we started in 2013, there was no conference discussing, unless medical congress, psychiatry, etc., very restricted. So and our first slogan was, let's get the drugs out of our minds and put it into discussion. So in the second year of our conference, we understood that prevention was very important. Because, I mean, the industry, I'm from the field of marketing. I began to understand a little bit. It became very clear for me. There's a market that consumes drugs in Brazil, that's addicted to the product and pays any value, any amount for it. It's the best thing in the marketing field. So I don't need to invest in advertising for that consumer. What must develop is a distribution system, which I call trade, and here for drugs it's called the point of sales, to bring that. So what do they work with communication? The potential consumer of drugs. So to close this great presentation, a great round of applause for this panel, which was very, very good. Reminding that this panel is recorded, so in 3 languages, Portuguese, English, and Spanish, and it's saved in a web link. And just bye-bye to the people who work with the link, and it's uploaded to our YouTube channel. So this year, we are launching our Pocket Freemind. So a person who is in a city and the countryside of Minas Gerais can get this panel here at night. They bring people together at the club of the town and put 4 or 5 people. They show the panel you've just presented, and they conduct a discussion. And that's our mission. Our mission as Freemind Mobilization is to bring information, bring training, and also alert that we must have a spirit of unity. Round of applause to you all. I'll hand you your certificates, and let's take a photo.